Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season 6 kickoff of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of pop culture entertainment news website. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and please subscribe. If you're listening to this on any of our audio downloads, please start download this episode and please download this episode and more episodes. There are no words to describe my next guest here on my right. She is an award-winning actor and singer, but for many X-Men fans, you know her as the Southern Belle Rogue, and she is the author of a book called A Rogue's Tale. And as of this recording, she has over 16,800 Instagram followers. So please welcome the incredible Lenore Zann to the podcast.
Hello there, sugar. How you doing?
As the 90s kid that has watched Batman and Spider-Man and X-Men, that meant so much to me, Lenore.
Aw, sweetie, I'm so glad. It's nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
You're so welcome, Lenore. And I got to say this, and I told you off there, but I want to tell you again to everyone. X-Men animated series played a huge role in my childhood, along with Power Rangers and Batman and Spidey. But so Fox Kids forever. And I got to say, X-Men 97 blew me away. And I'm so glad we got to see you guys again.
Right on. I'm so glad. Yeah, it's great to be back, bigger than ever. And it's so nice to hear you say that we played such an important role in your childhood. I hear that a lot at Comic Cons, where a lot of the fans who were kids in the 90s now are older. Many of them have children of their own. And they say, thank you so much, Lenore. You made my childhood. And I can tell you, that is so touching for me and for all of my colleagues. We're just honored and grateful that our show meant so much to so many people. And we had no idea at the time or in the last 30 years what an effect we'd had on people until the show came back out again this past year. And now we're starting to feel the love. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. We'll get that. We got to put a pin in X-Men 97 and X-Men talk soon. But however, we got to get to your origin story. So when did you get interested in performing, and how did that passion evolve into a desire to pursue a career in the entertainment industry?
Well, in my book, A Rogue's Tale, I talk about my early years, my origin story, my early years in Australia as a kid. Um, I went back and forth between the city, which was Sydney, with my mom and dad, and the country, which was called Karua, which was called the bush. It was the Australian bush where my grandmother lived. And my mom introduced me to ballet at an early age, and I fell in love with dance and with ballet. And my mom and dad used to drop me off at the local ballet theater in Sydney, the Royal Ballet, every Saturday afternoon when I was just little. I mean, I was 6 and 7 when they used to drop me off by myself to go and watch a matinee. And I mean, I saw some incredible ballerinas, famous at the time, like Rudolph Nureyev and Margot Fontaine do Swan Lake, for instance. And I think being in a theater and with the crowd and the excitement and the rustling and then the lights all going down and everybody becoming quiet and just focused on the stage, and then the beautiful performers coming on with the lights, the costumes, the sound, the music. I think all of that is what first made me want to be up there on stage. I had no idea at the time that I would end up going into acting. I thought I wanted to be a ballerina. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be a ballerina at the circus, where I could be a ballerina in a pretty tutu, flying around a ring on top of a horse, a white horse, doing arabesques and balancing act for the audience. And that was my dream. Now, eventually, I did go into politics in my later years. Some might say that could be a balancing act, like a ballerina at the circus, but
Oh, yeah. Oh,
that's
yes, yeah.
later on in our conversation. But yeah, that's probably where my desire to perform first started.
That's amazing to hear. And actually, one of the very first roles that you played was probably one of the greatest movie stars of all time, Marilyn Monroe. So, what were the lessons that you learned about Marilyn and how to, in order to prepare to portray her on the stage?
Yeah, I mean, I was 19 when I was chosen to play Marilyn. I was discovered at the Charlottetown Festival, which was a theater festival that they do every summer in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, which is where Anne of Green Gables, the stories are all about Anne of Green Gables, took place in Prince Edward Island. And I understudied Anne in Anna Green Gables, the musical. That was one of my first gigs. It was actually I think it was my second professional gig. And I was discovered at the end of that summer. I just played small roles all summer. And then I was discovered at a concert where I did a Marlene Dietrich imitation of a Barbara Streisand song from the musical Funny Girl. And the author, composer of a show called Hey Marilyn, a rock opera on the life of Marilyn, happened to be in the audience that day, saw me perform, turned to his wife at the end of my number, and they both said, "That's Marilyn." um, I got whisked off to the west coast of Canada, like to the west, where I performed as Marilyn. And I learned so much about the woman herself, about her intelligence and her sensitivity, but also some of her downfall, which was she was an alcoholic and a drug addict. She was addicted to sleeping pills and prescription drugs. And nobody could really help her because everybody around her was just enabling her. As she was very, very lonely, uh, and she really didn't know how to love herself. And to be honest, I also was like this, and I fell into alcohol and drug addiction at that time, right up until I was 36, when I decided that the braver choice instead of suicide by alcohol and drugs was to live. And I knew that in order to live, I had to quit doing all of it, and I did. Um, and that was the same age, 36, that Marilyn Monroe actually succumbed to an overdose of alcohol and drugs. So, I learned a lot from Marilyn, and I still feel she's with me to this day. I feel like she's there looking over me, and she pops in and out of my life and in and out of my consciousness at really important times. And so it's almost like I feel like she's looking over me.
I'm glad that she's looking over you, and I'm so glad that you were able to overcome this and
Thank
we're
you.
able to have this conversation. You're able to see the fans that you've generated. You've gained 2 or 3 generations of fans in a lifetime.
Exactly. I know. And I do say there, but for the grace of God go I. I think addiction, I talk about it in my book. Addiction and alcoholism is a family disease. It affects the entire family. And it's also genetic. So, alcoholism oftentimes will run in families. Sometimes it will skip a generation or it will skip somebody in that family, but hit someone else. And I know that many, many people are still out there struggling, or they have a family member that is, or they know someone that is. And it can happen to any of us at any time. So, again, I my book is about hope. It's about my own story of how when I hit bottom at the age of 36 and was loved back to health by the AA community on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Los Angeles. And it's been 28 years now, and I live a sober life, and I really love it. I'm much happier now than when I was drinking.
I gotta applaud you. I have to. I just have to.
Thank
And
you. Thank
and
you.
thank you so much for sharing this. And guys, if you're sort of mental health crisis, 988, once again 988. Lenore, I want to say thank you for that. But however, we got to raise up the conversation and raise it to talk about something that brings us all together, a lot of our audience together, and
Yeah.
that is the world of the X-Men. So many of audiences, many of my audience members know you for time as Rogue for both X-Men, the original cartoon series, and X-Men '97. So, what drew you to the original project?
Well, originally X-Men, I was chosen again for that one as well. I had played a lot of sultry, sexy characters, including, starting off with Marilyn Monroe, um, as an actor in my 20s. And when I turned 31, I had came back to Toronto. I'd been doing a play in New York and Chicago for a couple of years called Unidentified Human Remains and the True Nature of Love. And I came back to Toronto after that long, long, long run, and my agent said, "Lenore, there's an animated production, and they're looking for a woman who can do a Southern accent, who has a husky, lower, sexy voice, and just full of sex appeal and charm." And she said, "That's you. So, would you please go down and audition for this role?" Now, at the time, I wasn't that interested in doing animation because I was doing film and television and live theater and also radio drama. And I had won an award for my voice for radio drama, in my late 20s. It's called an ACTRA award in Canada, and I won Best Actor across Canada for my voice. Um, and so I didn't do the audition right away. I wasn't that interested. And she called me back about a month later and she said, "Lenore, they still haven't found the right actress to play that role. And I know it's because it's you. So please get your ass in gear, get down to the studio and audition." And I walked into the studio and I looked at the drawing of the character, and there she was standing with her hand on her hip and her head up in the air, and that red hair with a white stripe up the middle. And she just had sass and attitude. And I just fell in love with her just looking at her. And I went, yeah, I can play that. And so I walked in the booth, put the headphones on, and the producers were in LA at the time, and I just read the first little paragraph they'd given us, which was, I remember to this day, "My daddy liked to kill himself when he found out I was a mutant. I remember I had me a boyfriend when I was 13, had me a boyfriend till I kissed him. Poor boy went into a coma for 3 days." And um, I heard these screams on the other end of the headphones, and it was the producers in LA, the men, going, "Don't let her leave the building. That's Rogue. That's the one we've been waiting for. That is the voice." So that's how it happened the very first time around. And then of course the second time around they came a knocking, and I said, "Sure, sign me up, sugar. You had me at hello."
And I'm so glad your agent was right about you. And when I heard about the screams from the men in Los Angeles, they knew it. So I got there. There are two episodes of X-Men '97 I would love to talk to you about because I think those were two of your most masters because you went on a huge emotional spectrum. So I'm sorry for spoilers, everybody, but we have to talk about Remember It, which was basically the rise and fall of Genosha, and sadly Gambit's fall as well. And then we have Bright Eyes, where you go up against Thunderbolt Ross and Captain America.
Yeah. What do you want to know, sugar?
All righty. So what were some of your memories? Because those are two intense episodes, like on the emotional spectrum. So what were some of your memories reading those lines, reading the dialogue and saying, okay, oh my God, I can't believe they're going to kill Remy. Or like, I can't believe Rogue's going to go toe to toe with Captain America.
Well, first of all, when I first read the script for Remember It, I was devastated because I love Remy, both myself, Lenore Zann, and also my character Rogue. And yeah, it was very emotional. It packed a huge punch. And in real life, I was also at the time grieving personally for the loss of my lovely young niece, Maya, who succumbed to cancer at the age of 17. And she had passed away maybe a year before, 8 months, a year before. And my whole family was broken. We all were broken by the loss of that beautiful young girl. And so I had been crying and crying and crying for months. And when I decided that, because I knew so clearly and so effortlessly what it was to grieve, I felt that as an actor, it was my responsibility to pour all of that authentic emotion into my performance in that episode, uh, and in episode 7 as well, Bright Eyes, where in the beginning you're just broken, you're lost, you're as down as you can possibly be. The grief is just overwhelming, and I channeled all that into that performance in episode 5, ending, of course, with the words, "Sugar, I can't feel you. I can't feel you." And it was cathartic for me because I was able to have an outlet for my grief, to put it all into my performance. And I hoped that it would also help others who had lost somebody, either through the pandemic, through those terrible mass shootings that had been happening in the States. We'd had a mass shooting, a terrible one in my own community not that long before. And also with all the wars that are going on and that we were seeing around the world, I really hoped that people who were deeply grieving and may not even know it, that it would trigger something inside of them to feel their feelings and release them in a cathartic exercise of like tears. And I was very actually glad to hear that, in fact, it worked and people did feel it and they did cry. And I've heard from so many people that it just broke them and it opened them up, made them feel their feelings, and they were able to release them in tears, which ultimately is very healing. And then episode 7 was when the rage comes in. And anybody who's gone through the grieving process knows that there's a time where oftentimes you will feel really, really angry about, why did this have to happen? And so I decided to also put all my rage and my anger and despair into that performance in episode 7. And and I have to say, it was a lot of fun to pick up that shield and biff it for miles.
Oh yeah, I was cheering for you when you took the shield away from Captain America. I was like, what?
Yeah, it was a blast. I was like, yes, please let me do this. It was an iconic moment. And I've got a Captain America jacket that I now wear. My X-Men badge on it very proudly.
All right, so that was perfect. And what did the feedback that you received at the conventions about X-Men '97? What did it mean to have the X-Men fan community be and the MCU community be so happy that you guys are back?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's been really overwhelming. The show itself, when it came out in March, was an instant hit. I mean, we got 100% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. We 99% approval rating on IMDb. You can't, go wrong with numbers like that. And it was a huge hit for Marvel and for Disney, and I'm really pleased for them. So, for those of us who'd been in the show originally, it was a real blast because back in the 90s, of course, there was no social media. There was not even an internet. There were no emails. There was nothing. And so we basically acted in a void in our little studio in Toronto and then sent off the tapes to LA, and we never heard anything back. Just at the end of each year, we didn't know if there was going to be another season. And then we'd hear, oh, yeah, they're going to do another season. But we had no idea how popular the show was until about 5 years ago when we were first invited to go to a couple of Comic Cons. and we went to the LA Comic-Con in 2019, and there were 100,000 screaming fans there. And we looked at each other before we went up on stage for this panel, and we were hearing them all just roaring. The crowd was roaring, and we looked at each other. I remember Chris Potter, who played Gambit, and we were like, Are they here for us?" Like we couldn't believe it. So it's been really amazing being able to see the response and hear the response from the fans in person at Comic Cons and also online, and be able to connect with fans online as well.
And that's perfect. So speaking of online, what are some of your favorite platforms to connect with your fans on?
Well, people can find me on Instagram at Lenore Zann, LENOREZANN. I'm still on Twitter at this point in time, on X at Zan Lenore, but I am seriously thinking about going over to Blue Sky because so many of our fans and so many people are over there now. And I'm on Facebook, and you can follow me on Facebook, Lenore Zann. And yeah, please follow me, and keep an eye out for where I'm going to be. If I'm going to be at a Comic-Con near you, I'm going to Houston, Texas, December 6th and 7th. That's my next Comic-Con. And then in January, I'll be in Puerto Rico. And then the only other one I'm doing in the early spring is also in Charlottesville. I'll be doing that one the end of January, early February.
And before we conclude, I wanted to bring up your book. I'm very excited to read A Rogue's Tale. So how long did it take you to write this book from inception to release?
Yes. Well, right now you can get it instantly as a ebook on Amazon. So please get the ebook and write a short review if you can. If you like the book, please write a short review because they help. And the more good reviews that you get on Amazon, the more they will promote it. So yeah, it's available on Amazon for ebook. It's also available Barnes and Noble, but for ebook, and you can pre-order books on those websites as well. Uh, and in Canada, those ones still stand, as well as Indigo and Indigo and Chapters. So yeah, give it a shot. Read the ebook, and then if you like it, get the paperback later on.
All righty. And guys, if you missed an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, visit our channels on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Speaker. Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOBELYACHAR. Now, are you on social media? I'm on social media too: Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube. Jacob Elyachar, JACOBELYACHAR. And for more on my take on the X-Men and all Marvel DC, head to jakes.chick.com. Lenore, it was such an honor to have you here. And I am so excited to read your book. And I'm so excited for X-Men 97 season 2 because that's going to look amazing.
I know you're going to have to wait for about a year for that, but it is going to be amazing. And I've already recorded most of my lines for season 2, and I think you're going to love it.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a great one, everybody.
Bye, sugar.
Bye.